Okay, let's move to lesson number 2, which is arm your team with a dedicated selling platform. So let's talk about that. You have your CRM and you have your DMS. Those are the main systems that most dealers are using when they're working deals. Okay, why do we need a third system that kind of bridges the gap between those two?
You want the honest answer?
Yeah.
It's because neither one of them are very good at it. Like, the honest answer is that because there is nobody out there taking on the actual selling of a car. It kills me. Like, I'm in dealerships day in, day out, and the real answer is the reason we built it is because nobody else is, right? Like, every system out there relies on a sheet of paper and a Sharpie to go close a car deal. This is 2024. You don't buy anything with a sheet of paper anymore. Basically, the interface that everyone uses is always a digital interface for everything we buy, right? If you're at Target, you're checking out with a digital interface. Like, everything is like that. And then you come to a dealership and they're like, all right, well, here's what my manager will do. Man, like, the reason that everybody's using that is really twofold, because they think that's the only option, right? If you're desking a car deal today, you think, well, this is how you work a car deal. This is how my manager taught me how to work a car deal. And the only way to do it is with a sheet of paper and a Sharpie. And the reality is that's what anybody that's the only tech stack that's out there right now, outside of what we're doing at AutoFi. And I had this presentation with our leadership team, and I literally had a slide that this is our competition, and it was a picture of a printer, sheets of paper that were stacked up in a Sharpie, because that's 99% of car deals in America. That's how those deals are closed.
Well, and I think the average dealer would say, well, I'm being transparent, right? I'll put a price in front of them. I'll print for my DMS, and I'll put it in front of them. Like, how would you respond to them? Like, is that enough?
What I would say is that it's not good enough, Kerri. If I was running a dealership tomorrow, you couldn't pay me to go back to that methodology. What I mean by that is the results, and you've seen them. You do our marketing analytics. You know that when you take a sheet of paper and you put it on a screen and you have a salesperson say to a customer, instead of like laying down the numbers and getting ready to arm wrestle with them, hey, let's build your deal together. And they turn and they go, okay, with 10% down at 60 months, you're at a $785 payment. Is that what you would like to do? And the customer goes, whoa, I was wanting to go lower than that. Can we do 72? Okay, well, at 72 months, and the customer gets engaged in that process. What they subconsciously start doing is taking mental ownership of what's happening on that screen, which increases dramatically the likelihood that they say yes to it. The second part of this is what kills deals?
Time.
Okay. So think about this. Every dealership we've been in together, when I ask the question, is your dealership unique? Do you guys get a customer here every hour on the hour like clockwork, or does it come in waves? They all laugh and they say, oh, it all comes in waves, right? Yeah, you've got nothing happening. And then all of a sudden it's like crazy town. It's boiler room. And I've got 3 people standing in front of me working car deals. If you're the unlucky one that's third in row and I just got back from a test drive, how long does it take that person to get a first pencil? Every single person today said between 15 and 30 minutes. Okay. What kills deals? Time. Then why do we let a customer wait 15 to 30 minutes to get the first pencil? And what's crazy to me is we've known this our whole lives. When's their buying temperature the highest? It's the moment they get back from a test drive, right? So what do they do for 15 minutes when they're saying, what happens to that buying temperature? It comes crashing down. You're a human being. If you sit anywhere for 15 minutes without having any idea what's going on, what does it make you want to do?
I want to leave.
Okay, we are psychologically pre-programming customers to want to leave before we ever show them the information that we're going to ask them to say yes to. And what's wild to me is it does not have to be that way. If a customer gets back from a test drive and a manager's built a deal in AutoFi and they give a thumbs up to the salesperson can sit down, turn the screen and go, hey, this is the car we just drove. Is this the car you'd like to own? The customer goes, yep, that's it. Great, then let's build your deal together. And they turn their chair and they're looking at numbers. The question I ask GMs, sales managers, GSMs, salespeople, and they all respond yes to is, if you could get numbers in front of a customer the moment you get back from a test drive, would you close more car deals? You know what 100% of people say? Absolutely. Yes. Okay, if you could get numbers in front of a customer the moment you get back from a test drive, would you hold more gross? You know what they all say? Absolutely. Okay, then I ask, well, then why aren't you? Oh, well, because they got to come to the desk and I got to build my deal out and I got to print. No, you don't. That's what you had to do. That's what you have to do if you're using another system. With our system, you don't have to do that. You can build it and they can get back and go right to it. And so I think that the 2-part answer to that question is most dealers don't realize that there's something else out there. Most dealers don't understand, because they haven't been exposed to it yet, that there is a better way that will close car deals faster, it will give away less gross, and it will make your customers happier. And it's why I've been living in a van with my wife and 6 kids for the last 8 weeks, driving around the country, visiting dealers, trying to help them to see this. And you know what's been wild to me is basically everywhere we go, everyone's like, yeah, this is what I want. And we've been like signing up dealers in groups like before even the whole event happened, that we're going, okay, no, this is what I want. This is what I want to be able to do. And for me, I think it's because dealers think that the only way to do that is by using a suboptimal desking tool that came free with my CRM, or that I'm paying $500 a month for to have as an add-on with my CRM or my DMS, where I can print out a 9-box like it's revolutionary, but it's basically a regular printout with a 9-box and a manager signature at the bottom of it. And like, we can get into, there's so much from this that I think are like ripples of implications that people aren't even thinking about.
Well, let me play devil's advocate, because the fear, I think, when you talk about arming your salesperson to be able to have that conversation, right? So customer wants to adjust their down payment, enabling them to do that. Or, hey, can I compare finance versus lease, right? All of that, like putting that in the hands of the salesperson. My salesperson can't handle that. I don't want them screwing this deal up and giving away gross.
So there's 2 answers to that. First off, whose fault is it that they can't handle it?
Well, good point.
Okay. I was a sales manager. If my salespeople couldn't handle that, that's on me, because my number one job is to make them unbelievable at theirs. Secondly, that's why we built so many safety nets into AutoFi. Like, we built AutoFi so, dumb 22-year-old that just started selling cars 3 weeks ago can present a pencil to a customer. And you know what's crazy to me is that this is like, I hate to say idiot-proof presentation software that makes it the customer's idea. But you know what we do on the alternative is we arm that 22-year-old with a printout and a Sharpie signature and hope that they're magically going to transform into like Don Draper and close some 65-year-old dude that's spending 80 grand buying a new F-150. Like, which one of those two is more crazy? Us expecting a salesperson to use technology that puts guardrails all around it to present numbers to a customer, or us expecting a 22-year-old with a sheet of paper to go close my papaw on buying a new Chevy truck? Like, one of those things feels like a bigger stretch for me, but we just accept that second one as business as usual.
Well, and we have to remember the topic of trust, which I wasn't going to get into, but we're here and we should talk about it, because I always say trust is the elephant in the showroom.
Oh, man.
It's like we talk about talk tracks and all these strategies and how we can close the customer and take control of the deal. But the one thing we don't talk enough about is how do we bridge this trust gap that has always existed and maybe is even worse today than it ever has been in the history of
I've actually been asking that question, right? I've been asking dealers like, okay, let me ask you all this, because I was shocked when I went undercover selling cars last year. Like, I expected today's customers to be like way better and like way more friendly and trusting. Do you think they trust us more now or more in like 1998 when I was like, oh man, they don't trust us? They're way worse today than they were back then. And so for me, like, think about this. We have a customer that's trust gap is probably the highest it's ever been, right? And then how do we try and bridge that with a sheet of paper and a Sharpie? Like I don't care what tech stack you're using. That's how you're presenting numbers. What's wild to me is the amount of studies that are out there, right? I've heard it said that a human being is 10 times more likely to give their credit card to a computer or a computer checkout thing than they are to hand it to a person to go manually run it for them.
100%.
And what's wild to me is like, that's because we interact with machines when we buy stuff pretty much 100% of the time now. And so in my opinion, like, the neutralizing effect or the trust gap bridge building that using a digital interface to work a car deal with a customer. I mean, we train a 5-step close at AutoFi. It's the easiest, simplest close ever. You literally get back from a test drive and step number 1 is confirm the selection. You go, okay, this is the car we just drove. Kerri, is this the vehicle you'd like to own? And because we've just got back from the test drive, you know what almost every customer says? Yep, that's the one. Great. Then what we do is we turn our chair, we turn the screen, so now that the customer turns their chair, we're sitting side by side, and we go, great, then let's build your car deal together. That's step 2. Step 3, just read what's on the screen. Okay, with 10% down at 60 months, you're at a $785 payment, and step 4 is ask them to buy. Kerri, is that what you'd like to do today? And if Kerri goes, no, well, that's higher than I wanted, great, well, we can extend the term or we can increase down payment. Well, maybe put $5,000 down. Now I'm engaging the customer and building this. I don't know why I didn't turn this way. We turned this way to the screen, right? And now I'm engaging the customer in like building out their car deal. And I went to F&I training, I think in 2004, maybe 2005. And one of the things that Chris Kirby, the F&I trainer, said that is still locked in my brain is that if I want somebody to say yes to an idea, it has to be their idea. I heard a salesperson the other day, well, this is what my manager's willing to do. Well, whose idea? That's the manager's idea. That's my idea. When you turn that screen, it becomes the customer's idea. And then when they see, 3 lenders pop up with guaranteed approvals at sell rate, they choose the one that makes the most sense for them. And now it's their choice. And they're not mad at me over the interest rate. They're looking at the interest rates that the banks are giving them.
Well, that is the power of choice. And there's all kinds of studies that say 3 is the optimal number
Absolutely.
when it comes to choices. So if you give me one offer, I'm more likely to turn that down than if you put 3 offers in front of me.
So I'll give you a real example from me working car deals. Had this dude buying a vehicle. I don't want to go into too many details, but is the person you up and the first thing out of their mouth is arguing about rate? Like, don't you try and pull. And I was like, sir, we don't even found a car yet. Like, we'll get to rates. I ain't paying no more than 10%. Okay, cool. We'll get there when we get there. And we finally get to the end of the car deal. It's 0 money down. It's 84 months. I go, okay, let's click here. I know you don't like our estimated rate. Let's click here. It's going to use the same technology that powers, like Rocket Mortgage's online lending. And this technology, when you click on this button, is going to submit your car deal to the top 3 to 5 lenders for your credit profile on this vehicle. And it's going to let the banks compete for your business. Would you like to see what the banks come back with? Absolutely. Okay, we click it. We fill out the credit app. It takes 2 minutes. All of a sudden, the 3 offers pop up. The best offer was Ally. Ally was at like 15 and a half for 84 months. Chase cut him back to 75 months at like 18. Santander cut him back to 75 at 19. And I'm immediately like, oh man, he's about to start yelling at me. And 45 seconds of this guy's loud nose breathing, right? They're like, in my head, by the way, I'm like, don't say anything, Joe, don't talk. At the end of it, he goes, all right, I'll do the Ally one. And I was like, come again? Like, did you say you'll do the Ally one? In my entire career desking car deals, I don't know that I ever sent out the worst approvals to show the customer. I just would have sent my salesperson out with 15.5 and they would have gone out and be like, no, don't make me do this. I'm like, bro, get your spatula out. You're going to peel them off the ceiling. And then they would have gone out. They would have had a fight. While they were doing that, I'd be like shopping rate with different lenders, trying to find somebody to get me close to 10. I'm holding a dime on the trade. Maybe I'll pick up some products. I can buy the rate down. I'm like trying to work to get to a deal that I think this guy might say yes to. And by putting those options in front of them, the customer said yes to a deal that was already making me $1,500 in F&I because the rate was protected.
And it goes back to human psychology once again. It is having the choices. It's really having the validation.
Correct.
Right? Because if you put a rate in front of me by itself, number one, we already have a trust gap. I'm coming in ready to fight with a chip on my shoulder based on my last car purchase or my neighbor's car purchase. And now you're putting this rate in front of me and I have to now trust you that you did everything you could to get me the best rate. But when I see 3 banks show up, one, I have the comparison of what really is out there. And guess what? I have the lender's logos. It came from the banks. The banks are delivering the bad news, not Joe St. John.
I think that for me, that's been one of the real eye-openers to this is the ability for us to get it right for the vast majority of those car deals, knowing that there are real safety nets there to keep a salesperson from screwing it up, right? I don't want a salesperson to ever be able to submit a car deal on a 540 score, right? Like, don't send a 540 to the lender without me looking at it. I don't want somebody that's 140% LTV to ever make it over there. So I think by creating these safety nets, what we've allowed is we keep building better bumpers on the lanes. So we just keep letting the car deal go forward as long as the customer's saying yes to something that I'm winning with. If the customer needs to go outside of that as a salesperson, now I have to involve a manager because it's outside of the scope of what I'm allowed to interact with.
And that is the beauty of technology.
Correct.
Right? It allows us to be more efficient in the decisions, and we call it optimize,
yes.
Right? Automate, or optimization. Did I say that right?
Automate for optimization.
Automate for optimization.
Correct.
But it also allows us to handle these use cases where it's out of bounds and take it out of the technology.
Well, because you have to have flexibility for the sales manager,
Yes.
right? Like one of the big flaws for most companies that have tried to do anything like this, including us in the early days of doing this, is you have this idea of what a car deal needs to be. And if we put all these data elements in there, it's going to work. But the problem is a car deal, it doesn't ever go the way, it's like life. It never goes the way you think it's going to go.
Yeah.
And so you have to have the flexibility as a manager to do whatever it takes for me to get to the car deal I'm going to say yes to. And sometimes that means a lot of things that I need to be able to edit or change or move around or do that might not make sense to an engineer in San Francisco that's building technology, but it makes sense to me in this moment. And in this moment, the most important thing is that I get that car deal because it's the 28th of the month, and it could be the difference between us getting the money from the manufacturer or not. And so for me, not having that flexibility is the worst set of handcuffs, and it is the biggest reason why people at a dealership won't use technology. So one of the first things we had to do was literally blow the doors open to let a manager be able to do whatever they want to do in the system.
Okay, let's talk about the manager. Can I apologize to all the sales managers and GSMs out in the world? Because my career, I've spent mostly on working for lead providers, working with internet managers and marketing directors. And I don't know if I had the empathy
Thank you, Kerri.
to understand all that is on a sales manager's shoulders. And so let's talk about that, because I feel like their role has evolved and they've taken on more.
I on behalf of all the sales managers in America, we appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, man. Like the first thing I noticed going undercover last year selling cars was, man, sales managers are smoked. Like sales managers are so exhausted. And I think back when I was a sales manager, like all of these things have shifted to become sales manager responsibilities that sales managers never really had to deal with. So now, like in 2000, if you went to any dealership in America, you know who submitted most of the car deals?
It'd be the F&I.
Yeah, finance manager.
Yep,
the finance manager submitted every car. In my dealership, we in finance. And every dealer we've been to out on the road, who submits car deals?
Sales manager.
The sales managers.
Yes.
Do you know why it moved from F&I to the sales manager?
I'm assuming time or efficiency
Yeah, because
of some kind.
it took too long in F&I.
Okay.
So the number one complaint on all the CSI surveys was it takes too long in F&I. And as a finance manager that submitted car deals, I would get a file folder, and then I would sit down, I would open it up, and then I would look at the customer's credit history. I would probably look at my structure. I would build out my menu. I would submit it over to the lenders. I would look for my callbacks. I'd try and figure out where I was, and then I would go get the customer. Well, that's 15 to 30 minutes of me doing stuff. And F&I trainers be like, bring them back and try to build rapport while you're, structuring your car deal and sending it over. Which is hard to do because I'm trying to get this person to like me while also focusing on this like technically challenging stuff. And so the reaction to that was, why don't sales managers submit it, get a buttoned up car deal and send that back to F&I and let them bump for the upsell? And so now F&I is no longer the bottleneck that creates the time. It's the sales desk, because they're submitting car deals and trying to figure out how to structure and get it bought. Derek on our sales team today, we left the dealership. He ran to the restroom. He was coming out. One of the managers was coming out with him. And it was interesting because that manager was admitting to him that people don't realize how much time I'm spending and how much I'm second guessing when I'm submitting car deals of whether or not it's going to the right place or I know what lender to send it to. And I think that there's managers that feel that subconsciously. Most of us will never admit it because we're managers and we don't want anybody to know that we have any weaknesses. But it's interesting because when you look at the data, here's what I now know. We managers, when we submit car deals, we get it wrong a lot. Like if you look at the data at a sales manager submitting off of a credit app that was filled out in AutoFi manually or using AutoFi to submit, when AutoFi is applying logic that's derived from millions of approvals to route to the right lender based on the credit profile, the structure of the car deal, the LTV, the payment income, all the different data elements, AutoFi will send it to less lenders and get more approvals than managers doing it on their own. And what I've learned is that it's because managers are basically guessing. We're so overwhelmed with decision making at the desk, right? I'm on the phone doing a dealer trade. I got a 23-year-old in front of me that's going, hey, you remember that Tacoma you bid last week? Could you do 26 on it? And I'm like, bro, I don't get. And now I got a deal I'm working, and they're a 680 score on a used Sonata. And what happens is we build these like patterns that we just kind of execute against. Like, okay, greater than 45 grand, send it to Wells because they got a 5% flat. Okay, well, they're only buying up to 110% right now, yet I'm still sending them stuff that's at 115, 117, 113, 120. So I'm getting all these TDs on loans that are going out that is hurting my look to book with that lender, and basically me sending a deal because I'm not reading the detailed bullet points of every lender guideline that comes in every few days. And I'm trying to make guesses, and the TD guy was here last week and he told me about this program they've got. Maybe I should send it over to TD. We're just kind of trying to like guess and know based on our gut. And it's like, they would have approved this one 2 months ago. Why aren't they approved? I remember talking to a lender, I was like, bro, you approved one just like this a couple months ago. Like, yeah, but things have changed. Have you read the guideline? And I think that we just execute because our brains are so tasked as sales managers with all the things moving that we're literally making decisions that we shouldn't be making or that we don't have to make. And because we're making them for 100% of the time, that 20% when it really counts, we're not putting the effort towards it because I have to put effort towards all the ones that I basically shouldn't be putting any effort towards.
Well, and I think we use, outside of automotive examples, and it's like Google Maps, right? Like I'm using Google Maps just to route to my kids' soccer practice. I go 4 times a week to that same soccer field and I'm still using it. Why? Because I live in Southern California. Traffic is crazy. There could be an accident. I can't keep up with everything that's happening in real time, but Google Maps can.
Right. And you're not dialing 411 to hear the traffic thing and make your own decision, right?
Right.
No, you're going, plug it into Google Maps or Apple Maps or Waze, and it will tell me don't take the 405 because it's slammed right now.
Right. Well, I used to grab a big old map. We call it
an atlas.
Oh my God, I forgot the name of it. But in
the
LA,
McNally Road Atlas.
Yeah, you have all those things but that's crazy to even think about now with technology. And I think the same kind of applies when we talk about the decisions we're making in automotive.
You've seen it in building out our case studies on the operational efficiency gains that happen for dealers that try to optimize these systems and processes. I watched Michael Lutzke from Riverhead Mazda do a presentation for the New York Auto Dealers Association, and he was literally going step by step of everything that gets done in a car deal and the amount of time that each of these pieces take, and that if you can move to a system like AutoFi, how you can carve out literally hours of that car deal. And what's interesting to me is, like, you've seen the data. You've seen transaction times that shrink by 75+%. You've seen salespeople's per person unit average. Literally, the number of car sales that they sell a month go up by 50%. And you've seen front and back end grosses increase by $1,000 for specific stores. Like, you've seen that data that happens when dealers really focus on selling a car great. Like, I hate to frame it up that simply, but the actual process of selling a car, awesome.
Well, and also it's about attracting a different profile of salesperson too, because we know we have this new generation, right? And they're a little different than me and you. And what we're doing is we're putting this kind of antiquated way of selling cars in a generation that has only ever used technology.
What I love, one of my favorite data points that came out of your research was at a Subaru store in like a little faraway suburb of Los Angeles, where it's not LA, like it's a suburb. And I mean, it's like north of Burbank, right? And the Subaru store has a group of couldn't be more Gen Z. Mm-hmm. And their turnover is less than 5%. Because they had one salesperson, and they all sell over 20 cars a month.
And they come outside of the automotive industry.
There's not one of them that's ever sold cars before. And they're all doing 20 units a month. Like, that's literally their top salesperson who just turned 21 did 41 or 42 a month ago. Like, I've never sold 40 cars in my life, right? And this group of kids, for lack of a better term, they have no turnover because they had one person that heard if you go across the street to the CDJR store, you can make 20 grand selling 20 cars. And he went over there for a week and he came running back begging for his job back. He was like, they were trying to give me a sheet of paper with a bunch of sharp. I didn't even know what it meant. And so I think that what you do is, what's the part of I hired tons of people to sell cars for me. And the part of it that was the hardest and the scariest was presenting the numbers and closing the car deal. They were great at walkarounds. They were great at getting people licking the paint off the car. Their test drives were incredible. They could build unbelievable rapport. And then they would come inside and just especially when they were new. And what's amazing with AutoFi is that we make that so easy. It's, dealers have told me forever that they want to sell cars faster, right? And I went out and sold cars, and what I saw was not much had changed since 1998. It was still complicated. It was slow. It was ugly. And what we set out to build was a way to sell cars that was simple, fast, and beautiful. And when we did, it just worked and people took off with it. And for me, it's probably one of the things in my entire career that I'm the most proud of being a part of.
Well, I have never worked for a company that has a product that works with all these different types of dealers, whether they be one person, one price, whether they be a traditional store that has F&I, and also is actually used, right? We have stores that are using our platform on 80% plus of their deals.
Yeah.
Unheard of.
What's wild to me is when a dealership gets it and they start using it, and almost day by day, you see them using it more and more and more and more and more. And that's without, like, traditionally in software, you've seen this.
Yeah.
They use it, and then somebody shows up with some pizzas, does some training, and it goes like this, and then it does this, and then they show up with more pizza and more training, and then it does, and what's been wild to me is we have stores that need very little support. We don't need to go in and do more training. They may get some new salespeople that they want a webinar to show them where to click and do what, but it's just become the way that they do business, and so there isn't like an alternate path. That's just how we sell cars. And that's what I love about great processes. My dad used to say, processes aren't something you need to hang up in like the conference room. A good process is like putting on a seatbelt. You just do it and you don't think about it.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's what I've seen AutoFi become for all the dealers that are really taking advantage of our full capabilities on the showroom.
Love that. Okay.